Welcome to tonight's class, Landscape Myths Busted. So, thank you for hosting tonight, California American Water. Take it away, Wendy.
Hi, all. I'm Wendy Aikman. I'm the Southern Region Conservation Specialist, and I'm welcoming all of you here to our really fun Landscape Mythbusters webinar. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I have some exciting news to all of you that are attending tonight. We're going to pull your names from your emails that you registered from, and we are going to raffle off a free Ratio 8-station irrigation controller to one of you that is watching our webinar tonight. So please, I hope you got your email was right, so that we can make sure we get in touch with you. And you should be hearing from me a few days after the actual webinar to know that I'm going to be sending that to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Wendy. All right. Before we get started, it's always fun to find out what other classes you might have attended. We have classes with California American Water all year round. This is not all of them. This is just some of them. So you may or may not see the class that you signed up for, but if there's something on there that you went, wow, we took that class, go ahead and put that in there. So as you can see, we have classes on all different topics. We've got them on rainwater, we've got them on edibles, we've got them super popular on weeds and pests. Yeah, we would like to know what you'd be interested in. What else would be of value as you consider how you want to improve or change your landscape? We've got over 70 on with us tonight, so we'll give you just a moment. All right, we'll say going once, going twice, 3 times.
You know, actually, only 20 people have done it so far. So give it one more minute, just another
give it
30
one
seconds.
more minute. All right.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there anybody else? And now that I've said that, no one else wants to participate. Okay, fine.
All right.
Fine.
Oh, now they're slipping in. That's all right. All good. All right. So we've got folks that have attended some of these other classes. We've got compost folks. We've got irrigation folks, firescaping class, herbs. So yeah, as you can see, lots of different topics, and then check out the calendar for what is coming up for the rest of the year. All right. Thank you very much, Pamela, for running that poll. Here we go. So one of the things that will be helpful as you start your journey or continue your journey is this guidebook, the California Watershed Approach to Landscape Design. It will cover many of the topics that we actually talk about tonight, and it will be headed your way with a series of other resources and links. So the class is called Landscape Myths Busted because there are so many misconceptions covering all different areas of the world of landscaping. So there's myths about soil, myths about rainwater capture, lots of myths about plants and irrigation, myths about water conservation, turf removal, and then maintenance myths. So we will definitely be covering the gamut. If there's a myth that I've skipped or you'd like more information about it, more background, then please don't hesitate to ask. So let's start with this first myth. What we propose is watershed-wise landscaping. And when folks hear that or they think about, sometimes we'll say California-friendly landscape or drought-tolerant, climate-appropriate, this can be what people imagine. And the reaction is, oh my gosh, no. There is the assumption that if you work with native plants, that they can look messy and unkempt. And that is true, but it is not because of the native plants. So we will come back to this one in more detail. Definitely there is this sense, I did all this work, I took all the grass out, and then it all grew back and it actually looks worse than it did before. So again, we will talk about how that myth grew and what we can do to change that outcome. The bottom line is that you can absolutely have successful landscapes, landscapes that are beautiful, that create habitat, and don't require nearly as much water or as maintenance. The idea is that you do not have to sacrifice beauty in order to get the goals to meet the objectives that we all strive to as we look at potentially taking out turf and replacing it with these watershed-wise landscapes. So, gardens that love the sun, gardens that are welcoming and cooling in the shade. And the keys to the success, regardless of what the look is this concept of the watershed-wise landscape. So that is the lens that we want you to look at anything in the landscape. So a watershed is defined as an area of land where all of the water that flows over it or drains under it goes to the same place. And typically, when we think about a watershed, we are thinking about large, large areas of land. But the concepts are the same even in small areas. So any landscape, front yard, backyard, side yard, can be watershed-wise. Looking at the image on the left, what we would say is sort of a typical conventional landscape. You've got turf, you've got compacted soil underneath, not a lot of diversity. It rains or we irrigate, most of that water is running off, not a lot of habitat. Watershed-wise landscapes, basically the other side of the coin. It starts with that living soil sponge that is porous, holds on to rain when we get it, provides that moisture to the plants as they need it, as well as the nutrients for the plants. There is lots of diversity as far as the plants go. The soil has actually been contoured so that we can hold on to rain when we get it. And when it comes to irrigation, it is no longer the default, but rather it is there as a source of supplemental irrigation only when we need it. And the reason that these classes are sponsored by California American Water is because if you've got that healthy soil sponge and you're using climate appropriate plants and you're holding onto rainwater, the need for irrigation drops significantly. We are using less water in the landscape, and the water that is being applied as efficiently and effectively as possible. So it is so important to know what is the truth and what is not. So we will be visiting myths about the soil. So much is misunderstood. So even as I was talking about watershed-wise landscapes and I was talking about the soil under the grass, the turf there, it's actually not soil. It's dirt. Soil is full of life, full of biology. It can hold on to rain, and it is loaded with nutrients that are being provided by the biology in the soil. It is a living system. When we use the word dirt, to us, it's pretty much inert. It's not really doing much as far as supporting your plant life. So don't use dirt and soil in the same way. Next up, another myth, we hear that all the time, that clay is the worst type of soil. And again, that's not true. Actually, clay can be one of the better soils to work with. The real issue is compaction. So you can have compaction in sandy soil, in loam soil, and certainly with clay soil. What happens is when you're working that clay soil and it's compacted in the summer, it feels like you need to use a jackhammer. But the reality is that any of these soils can be improved, and they are all good soils. So I still hear this today, even with contractors sometimes when I'm talking to them and they're going, yeah, we've got clay soil. What do you think if we add sand to it? And you can go, oh, clay has very fine particles, sand has large particles. So if I add large particles to clay soil, that takes care of the problem. And that's actually not the solution. And in fact, if you're not careful by adding sand to clay or gravel to clay, you are actually creating concrete. So instead, what you want to use, if you've got soil that's hard to work, they call it a heavy soil sometimes, is add organic material. Compost, worm castings, humate, you're going to put mulch on top, but all of that will stimulate the biology in the soil, and it's that biology that will make your soil more porous. So again and again, we will come back to the life in the soil. Here's another one, and it has to do with the different sort of percentages. So soils are clay and sand and loam, and typically what they are is most soils are going to be some sort of combination of all of those in different percentages. So in the guidebook that you're getting, you'll actually, there's a couple of different soil tests that you can do to figure out what type of soil you have. Is it more clay? Is it more sandy? Getting the truth of what your soil is all about. And the thing is, again, that you can't change clay to sand. You can't change sand to soil. What we can change is the structure of the soil. And we do that again with that organic material. So there you go. It starts and ends with this biology in the soil. So, with the naked eye, I can see the worms, I can see pill bugs, they're all in there doing their good job. But in reality, it is the biology that you cannot see without a microscope that is doing the heavy lift. We say that the soil is alive. So there's bacteria in there, protozoa, nematodes, and there is this web. So you've got the bacteria, billions and billions in a teaspoon. They eat both organic and inorganic material, and they can't release waste. And instead, what they do is divide. You get the protozoa that have those little flagella so they can move around in a little bit of water. They eat the bacteria. And unlike the bacteria, they are able to eliminate their waste. And then you get the nematodes. And the nematodes eat the protozoa, they eat the bacteria, they eat each other. They look like worms, but again, you cannot see them without a microscope. And they too, as we sort of move up the food chain, they are able to eliminate. And it is at this point with the nematodes, as they start to show up more plentifully in the soil, that nutrients are being provided that the plants can actually access. So up until this point, not really. And then when we add that organic material, that is when the fun guys show up. So you've heard more and more common, it's much more in the vernacular now, the importance of fungi in the soil, the incredibly important role that they are as far as communicators, as far as transporting nutrients, water, etc., as far as communicating, the way plants talk to each other. And when they show up in the landscape, then we know we have a soil party happening. Okay, here's a super common one. And again, even in the trade, people will use those terms interchangeably. And that is that compost is a fertilizer, or that fertilizer is compost. And that is not true. They are very different elements. Compost is organic material of, you've got a compost bin. It is material that has broken down to the point where it actually looks like soil, it smells soil. It is fine enough for the biology to be able to ingest it. Fertilizer, man-made, and is actually detrimental to the soil in that it interrupts the relationship, the natural relationship between the plants and the biology. It creates this accelerated growth in a plant, which basically sets it up for a red flag for all kinds of pests. They go, ooh, juicy green growth, and they attack it. So your best bet, again and again, solution to almost any problem, add compost. And this really is the secret. And it's almost too simple. People don't think that it works, but it is the way that nature builds soil. We replicate that, and we can do the same thing. It is that combination of compost and plants and mulch. Compost goes on top, or it can be mixed in. Plants, you have to have the plants. Mulch goes on top, 3 to 4 inches, not too big. Make sure that nothing's been treated or painted. Tree trimmings are ideal. And I'll come back to the plants. We will talk about plants. All right, so here's the myth, is that it takes forever to build topsoil. And that is not true. Maybe out in the wilderness or in certain climates, it takes a long, long time. But with that process that we've just talked about, where you're adding compost and you're adding mulch, that topsoil can be improved and increased very, very quickly. So sheet mulching, especially if you are removing turf, is the way that this can be accelerated. So pretty much you're putting down paper, you've got the compost, the mulch, and then you are watering it. And you're breaking down the grass. So the grass contributes to the topsoil as well. And then very, very quickly, you are expanding the amount of topsoil, good soil, that is available to your plants. Oh, this one happens all the time. So depending on who you talk to, there is the myth that if you are putting natives in the ground, that they can go right in the ground without adding any compost or sometimes people will say amendment. Now, if you are planting a native out in the native landscape, then that would be the case. But unfortunately, if you are planting, where your turf's been removed or where you're living in a house and there's been construction, your soil is compacted and it is depleted. So that biology that is so important to improving the texture, the structure, and the food for the plants, is not available without some support, without adding that compost. So if you are planting natives, then you will need to do some extra work as far as improving the quality of your soil. That's what I just said. Soil is compacted, severely depleted, and so you really do need that compost to get the things going there. This is another one, and especially if you're growing edibles. I remember years and years ago when I was doing a garden, and I loved how fluffy the soil was when I dug it up and I turned it over. And then I learned about this universe below the soil, and that every time we cultivate, every time we turn or flip the soil, we are actually destroying, uprooting the biology that has been establishing itself. So it is literally a universe beneath the soil, and every time we turn it, we are breaking that up, and they have to start, they have to restart what they are growing there. Now, it's possible that people think that, they're doing the right thing by sweeping away all the leaves. Certainly, there is this desire to have a tidy landscape, a clean landscape. But this is actually dreadful for your plants. We come back again to the organic matter that is necessary for the biology. There's nothing here that is going to break down to feed our biology. On top of that, certainly as we're moving into warmer weather, right, the soil is hotter. Water evaporates from it more frequently, And really what you want to have is mulch, or when the leaves drop, let them stay there. Leave those leaves. And all of this makes things easier for us, right? You don't have to be out there raking or blowing or taking anything to the dump. You leave the leaves, you let them break down, you let nature do her thing. And the flowers. So the leaves fall, the flowers fall, and you just let it break down. In some cases, what's dropping are seeds, and this is how nature propagates. The one thing you might want to be a little bit careful about is if fruit is dropping. So if that's the case, then you are potentially inviting critters that you may or may not want to be hanging out in the garden. Now, this one is definitely, there's a lot of contention about mulch. And we did an entire class on fire-ready landscapes. And what the truth is that anywhere between 60 and 90% of homes that are burned are due to embers that are flying on the wind in the air. It is not your mulch catching on fire and spreading to your house. So this idea that you need to have no plants around the house, no mulch in the garden because it might potentially spread the fire is actually more detrimental, because then again you've got soil that is dried out, plants that are dried out, and then there's no resilience or little resilience when a fire actually does come along. We certainly get this one. Please ask questions as you're listening to this going, wow, I don't understand. Certainly the fire, maybe there are questions that you've got about that. Ask those. So people don't want to put mulch on their hillsides because they're worried that it will slide off. So if you've got mulch that's, 4 or 5 inches wide, yes, potentially. But what we want you to do when you're looking at your mulch is you're looking to 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So it is small mulch. It breaks down quickly. And what happens both on the hillside and anywhere you're putting mulch is that fungal network that we talked about, it will actually help hold the mulch together. If you were to turn a little bit of your mulch over, you'd see all of these white strands in there. So that is that fungal network that is growing and spreading and helps keep that mulch intact on your hillside. Another one about mulch, it invites termites. So there's no reason that mulch will invite termites any more than your house will. That being said, not a bad idea to go ahead and leave a 12-inch gap. You actually don't want anything right up against the house. You don't want mulch right up against the house. You don't want plants like right up against the house, because when they're being watered, you've got water at the foundation of your house. So 12-inch gap, you can put it with, certainly with gravel, you can do that, or you just leave it bare and then you go from there. So there are so many benefits to mulch. We talked about it keeps the soil cool, keeps the soil moist. It helps manage weeds or grass that's going to grow back, because you're doing 3 to 4 inches, right? It's not just this like sprinkling that you are doing. Super important. It feeds the soil party and it helps with erosion. So that combination of the fungal network, as well as there's more surface area. So, if water hits a smooth surface, it's just going to race down the hill. With mulch there, all of a sudden you've got more surface area. It slows the water down, and it improves the structure of your soil so that water can actually be more absorbed rather than simply running off. So all mulches are the same. Does it matter what I get? Absolutely. So you don't want rubber mulch. Good grief, no. You don't want anything that's been dyed or painted. Gorilla hair, not a great idea at all. And then walk on bark, again, the idea that we want small bits. Tree trimmings is really ideal for mulch in the garden, and you can get it for free. Here we go, smaller than 1.5 inches. Looks kind of like the forest floor. Again, smells really, really good. Okay, pine or eucalyptus stunts plant growth? No. Um, you can use just about any plant, uh, uh, clippings or leaves, depending on the type of plant. The one thing we stay away from to a certain extent are the palm fronds. Also, depending on the types of leaves that are falling, like magnolias are huge leaves, the possibility that maybe you want to mow over them so that they break up, so that they decompose a little bit more quickly. Okay. Myths about capturing rain, old stories, old fears. Okay, so this is a big one. When we talk about rainwater capture, oftentimes the pushback we'll get is, well, we don't really get enough rain. We're not Seattle. We're not Portland. No, we're not, which means that it's even more important for us to capture as much water, as much rain as we possibly can. And it's actually kind of astounding the amount of rain water that we can capture. So if you've got 1 inch of rain and 1,000 square feet, we can capture 620 gallons. Get 10 inches of rain, we can capture over 6,000 gallons of water. So we get at least 10 inches of rain, assuming we're not in a crazy drought, in most parts of California. So in your landscape, front yard, backyard, you could potentially be holding on to at least 6,000 gallons a year. And understanding again that there have been times where we've gotten flooding, and so there is a lot of fear about it. But what has happened is the pendulum has swung so far to the other side that we have actually exacerbated. We have made flooding even more challenging because if you have a rain garden and if your soil has been improved, then when we get rain, there is a much greater capacity for us to keep it in the landscape. And if many gardens were doing the same thing, you wouldn't have this, what's the word I'm looking for? Acceleration. If you've got 100 gardens holding on to rain, that's 100 gardens, that's 60,000 gallons of water that are not flooding the streets. So having rain gardens and watershed-wise landscapes is a way of actually counteracting what happens when we get those atmospheric rains, what happens when we get the flooding. There's another assumption. The great thing about rain gardens is they look so cool when they've got water in them. And people go, well, I don't want a pond. And what do you do when it's summertime? Are you supposed to keep it full? So no. Rain gardens, the intent, the purpose of a rain garden is to capture the rain, slow it down enough so that it can sink into the soil and spread out through the landscape. They are not intended to be ponds. We don't put fish in them. Yeah, ephemeral. So we get them in the wintertime when we're getting our rains, and then they are not full during the summer months. But what has happened when we do get our rains is all of that moisture has made its way, soaked into the soil instead of running off, and making itself available to the plants as they need it through the rest of the season. Do you need boulders and stones? Because that's what most of the pictures are. No. So stone is for the very most part an aesthetic choice, that dry creek bed look. In fact, stone is often overused and it ends up kind of looking like a, airplane ramp or airport ramp. So yes, you can do it. They are expensive, they are heavy. It definitely takes some expertise to work with them, but you're actually better off if you can plant it. So the one we just looked at, right? That's planted. The only place where some cobble is useful is at the base of the downspout. So sometimes that water comes out with quite a bit of velocity, and it's nice to have that stone there to sort of diffuse that. Better to plant your rain garden. It helps make that rain garden more porous, helps keep the rain garden cool. And then this one, I think we get every time we teach the rainwater class, the fear that a rain garden will attract mosquitoes. No. So first off, a rain garden is not a pond, and oftentimes that water actually sinks into the soil within hours. A mosquito needs at least 72 hours in order to breed. So the water is never in the landscape long enough to actually attract mosquitoes. We recommend a drainage test when you're starting to work with your garden. And if your water is sitting in a hole for longer than 72 hours, don't build the rain garden until you have improved the quality of your soil, because you potentially will have issues. And a lot of folks, when they think rainwater capture, they're thinking, I'm going to get a rain barrel. That'll work. Um, Not really. I want to hold on to 600 gallons. A rain barrel holds maybe 60 gallons. And they fill up at the same time that we're getting rain. So, are we going to keep water in the rain barrel for 6 months so that we can water a couple of roses? No. Uh, Rain barrels are used to direct the water into the landscape, because the water needs to be in the landscape where the plants can access it. So you'll attach a hose to it, run that hose out into the landscape. Your rain barrel fills up and then overflows into the garden where it will be used. Now, there's lots of myths about what is permeable and what is not permeable. And the surprise to a lot of people is that there are actually turf areas, grass areas that are almost impermeable. So it rains or you water, and most of that water actually ends up running off. So things that you assume are permeable but are not include turf, especially if there's thatch that's been building up, those dead roots and grass bits, decomposed granite, especially if you've added any sort of stabilizer to it, and bare soil. So it is much more about compaction than it is about the material on top, or combined. So do what you can to make all surfaces more permeable. If you've got turf and you are keeping it, you're going to dethatch, you're going to scrape off that material, you're going to aerate it, so we're going to put holes in it, and then you add compost, right? You get that organic material down into the soil where your biology can access it and go to work. Myths about plants and planting. We could write a book or teach a class. Okay, so plants need fertilizers to grow. No. We talked a little bit earlier about compost is not fertilizer. And synthetic fertilizers actually, again, disrupt that relationship between the soil roots and the biology and the fungi that are in the soil. And so that they no longer know how to function. It's a little bit like asking your kids to survive on vitamins instead of real food. And when we do that, we sort of debilitate the plant from developing its own resiliency. So all of a sudden, it can no longer tolerate drought, or hot, or cold, or pests. So we actually weaken our plants when we rely on fertilizers instead of that organic material. And I've talked about this relationship between the plants and the biology, and it's quite fascinating. And pretty much what's happening is you've got your carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The plant will take it, absorb it, and then it actually breaks those chemical chains. So we get oxygen as part of it, and then that carbon makes its way down into the soil. And then what happens is those carbon strands, and again, I am not a chemist, but basically they are reformed or reconfigured into different forms of carbohydrates. So we jokingly call them our cakes and cookies. And there is an exchange that happens between the plants and the biology who come over and they say, oh, we'd like a little of this, a little of that. And in exchange, the biology provides for the plants the nutrients that they require. So when we talk about climate appropriate, some people believe that only natives should be used. So if you are landscaping in California, only California natives should be used. And it's absolutely wonderful to add natives to a landscape, but it does not have to be exclusively natives. And in fact, the more diversity that we have, the more density that we have, is as important to the health of the landscape as opposed to only local natives. And so what we want when we talk about Mediterranean plants or climate appropriate plants, those are plants that are adapted to our climate. So, wet winters, dry summers, and there's 5 of them. So, maybe you're getting plants from Australia or from Chile or from South Africa or from obviously the Mediterranean. And all kinds of all kinds of plants will work in our local landscapes. Unfortunately, there are people who believe this, or who have been told this, and that is that if my plant is drought tolerant, then I don't need to water it. I can just put it in the ground, uh, and it will do its thing. And that is not true. So if you plant your plants like right before the winter rains and we get our regular rains, then great, your plants are off to a great start. But that's not always the case. Your plants definitely need water as they go into the ground. And then as those roots develop, as they spread out into the native soils, they will start to require less irrigation. And potentially, after a couple of years or whatever it takes for your plants to get established, you can take them off irrigation completely, assuming we have gotten our winter rains. Right, roses and camellias like a lot of water. So we've talked about working with natives and how you don't have to work exclusively with natives. You can have roses in your landscape. You can have camellias in your landscape. Camellias are a great option in shady gardens, and people love their roses, and there's no reason that you have to toss them out. But they benefit from healthier soil. They actually like mulch. And once they're established, they don't need nearly as much water as people assume. We get asked this question, when can we plant? Depends on where you live. But absolutely fall is not the only time to plant. It's optimal because you plant late fall and you get the winter rain. So it definitely makes your plants get established a little bit more quickly. But you can certainly plant into winter, you can plant into spring, you can plant into late spring. Where you want to be a little careful is when it starts to get really, really hot. And then it can be stressful for plants going into the ground. If you are planting hot, can you wait until the heat wave is over? Wait for a few days, keep them in the shade. Or if you are going to plant, can you plant later in the day so that at least as they are getting acclimated, they are moving into the evening when again, it is a little bit cooler. And then also don't plant when it's like sopping wet, because that actually contributes to compaction if you're like sort of like stepping on that wet water, on that wet soil. I love this one. Ficus make good hedge. I think most people understand that ficus don't make good hedge. These are 40 and 50-foot trees. And why we insist on cutting them, to 6 feet, and then planting them 2 feet on center, is definitely a story. So yeah, this is definitely, don't put them, and they've got very, very strong roots. Ice plant being great for slopes, I think a lot of people know by now, no, it gets sort of top heavy and it actually can come off the slope and take some soil with it. There are some great plants that are for erosion control, for stabilizing hillsides. A lot of natives will fulfill that purpose much, much, much better than ice plant. Much, much better options. So you've got natives, you've got succulents here. You can see there's a ceanothus in there. So manzanita, and all of those are great at holding a hillside. If you go out and look at your mountains, your local mountains, go, what's growing there on a hillside? Bring those into the garden. Natives are scraggly with no color. No, we just saw some here that are stunning. Blues, they come in all colors of the rainbow. They bloom all different times of the year. Many are evergreen. I think that's a concern. Sometimes they can look a little brown. Pick different plants. Pick plants that are evergreen. They go into bloom, and then, like the ceanothus, you've got this great deep green background. And I've got to pick it up a little bit because time is flying. Grassroots have the capability of actually growing many, many feet, 10, 12, 14 feet deep. So the short roots is due to compaction, not to that plant's ability to grow roots. Another one is that the roots on a tree are really just around the trunk. No, the tree roots will go out as far as the canopy. So if you have a 40-foot wide canopy, your roots are going out that far. And certainly they can go down 12, 15, 20 feet deep. So they are pretty significant plants. Grass should be mowed short. Absolutely not. Again, make life easy for yourself and your plants. So we recommend don't mow any lower than 4 inches. The longer blade means, believe it or not, you actually get a little bit more shade, which means that the soil is cooler and you are using less water, and that the plant can focus on growing its roots instead of healing itself from being mowed. That's another reason why those roots stay so short. We are huge proponents of diversity and density. So monocultures, one type of plant really, really inhibits what is possible in the landscape. Diversity is best. The more plants, the better. The more density, the better. And it's not just on top, but it's also the roots. So each plant, different roots, different biology. The more diversity is, the more quickly your soil will improve. Nature loves diversity. Irrigation. Goodness, we could write another book. All right, that irrigation is necessary. No, absolutely not. And we've been talking about all the different ways that you can certainly cut way back on irrigation and potentially turn it off. And there's certain parts of the state where that is even easier than you would think. So as far as what is good irrigation, conventional is the least efficient. So at a minimum, if you can change over to something that is more efficient. So your multi-trajectory rotating nozzles, if you're doing a spray, and then drip for shrubs and trees. Now, there are times when you will need irrigation. So again, if you've missed the rainy season and you're planting in May or June, yes, your plants are going to need some water to get established. There are even California natives, which in a garden setting are going to need a little extra water. Out in the wilderness, no, but again, in a garden setting, yes. And then certainly with climate change, deep droughts at times, things are getting more and more chaotic. So you kind of need to be prepared, if we don't get rain in the winter, that we have to provide supplemental irrigation. But again, with that soil sponge, capturing the rain, climate appropriate plants, we really can cut way back, if not eliminate completely our irrigation. Spray mimics rain, so it's better than drip. No. Um, there are so many benefits to drip. It is so much more efficient for any number of reasons. The water goes right to the roots. It doesn't evaporate as much. The soil can absorb it more thoroughly, so you don't get the runoff. So again, spray, we say if you've got turf, if you've got large swaths of ground cover, then maybe. But really for anything else, shrubs, trees, you are better off with drip. This one's great. Pamela and I laugh at this one all the time about how easy it is to convert spray to drip. We're working on projects right now where it was like, oh yeah, you can just go ahead and make that change. Not at all. It is rarely easy. You really need very, very limited conditions in order for it to be successful. But there are problems. Let me see if I've got that. Yeah. So here's an example of a project she and I worked on. I think these valves were as old as the house. They're not low flow valves. And so you can't convert something this old. It just won't operate properly. Another one with the controller, if you have a manual controller, this is definitely an issue, and that is that you turn it on and you never go back. So your plants at different times of the year have different water requirements. In the summer, they need more. Spring and fall, they need less. Winter, potentially, they don't need any at all. You need to change their controller in order to match your actual plant needs. Program for the summer, when the days are long, there's more evaporation, evapotranspiration, and then spring and fall, we adjust down, winter, we turn it off. My plant died, and it's probably because I didn't give it enough water. Sometimes, yes, but oftentimes we are actually overwatering it. So when there's too much water in the soil, not enough oxygen, we are creating what we call anaerobic conditions. And in that case, what's happening is there are pathogens. The biology that is growing in there is the cause of disease in plants. And unfortunately, you look at it and the symptoms are very, very similar. So if a plant dies, do a little exploration, find out what happened. And don't judge a soil by its cover. Make sure you go underneath a little bit, see how wet, how deep that wetness goes in the garden. What is a great tool is this soil probe so that you can go down, see what is happening, 8, 10 inches. You can see where the moisture is, you can see where the roots are, and it gives you a much better sense of how is my garden doing? Why are my plants struggling? Watering at night causes powdery mildew. That is also a myth. Again, it rains at night, doesn't it? So the powdery mildew, I believe, is a fungal disease. So yeah, keep plants off the ground. That is helpful. In some cases, giving it a little bit more air is helpful. But yeah, because doesn't it rain at night? Aren't our plants watered when it rains at night? All right. These are some seriously bad ones. Yeah, these are really bad. So when it comes to turf removal, dead grass is easier to remove. A lot of people will say, well, I'm taking it out anyways. Why would I water it? This is absolutely a myth. In that dead grass is much harder to remove. So make sure your soil is not sopping wet, but it is moist, and then it will be much easier to remove your grass. Gravel saves water. So having gravel either completely in your garden, or maybe you've got a few little plants here and there, it may save water and that you're not using as much, but it is so detrimental to the environment. There's so many consequences to going this way, the least of which it makes things hotter, and it does nothing for creating that soil sponge. This is how we contribute to our flooding as well. Decomposed granite, same thing. There's just a few plants. They're only cacti. They don't need a lot of water. I'm doing my job. No. So first, this is a very sad looking landscape. So just spirit wise, this is depressing. But when we kill that soil sponge, we are really causing much more harm than we think. Artificial turf, it doesn't even save that much water because, you know, you got to clean it off and what have you, but it is like putting plastic down in the front yard or the backyard. It gets hot, it kills everything below the surface. So no, don't put it in the landscape. So here is a from a manufacturer. They actually come out and say there have been no proven harmful effects. So they're proud of that because if you think about it, turf is really just plastic. Why would I want to put plastic in my garden? So yeah, there you go. And it's expensive and it's hot. So what they don't tell you is it does need to be replaced. Once you take it out, it goes into the landfills. It contributes to climate change. It does need to be washed, so you are using water. No habitat actually contributes to the microplastic pollution. We talked about the soil. And yes, it is not cheap to install. We've talked about how important it is to have not just diversity, but density. It may not seem intuitive, but the more plants that you have in the landscape, you are actually saving water. Again, the idea that more plants above ground is more roots below ground. More roots is more biology, which makes that soil even more porous. And so we are holding that water, making it available to those plants so we don't have to bring in as much supplemental water. Ask your questions. We've only got a few more minutes. So yeah, abundant, diverse, dense. And so, yeah, you took out your plants and you put down gravel or you put decomposed granite, and they actually took a thermometer to these different surfaces, and you can see how crazy hot, 60 degrees hotter with these surfaces than if we had left the plants. So, and it's great because the ambient temperature, so it was 108 degrees in the atmosphere, but closer to the grass, where that grass was, it was actually 8 degrees cooler. So plants actually help cool the environment. It's a fact. And so when we make those assumptions, when we make those choices, what we're actually creating are hydrophobic conditions. We are actually repelling the water. Water's not getting into the soil. It's not watering our plants. And then you just have this vicious cycle of we sink deeper into drought. We get dust storms, so we've got dirtier water, no habitat here. And then it gets hotter, so we need more energy, and the climate becomes more and more volatile. So we are contributing to climate change. We are contributing to a less healthy environment. So yeah, certainly in Southern California, we didn't get as much rain, but we have to be careful. We really do have to look at conservation as year after year after year. We always need to be careful about how much water we are using and making sure that the water we are using is used efficiently, and not forgetting that watering the landscape is an important use. We have to look at watering our landscape as an investment in terms of keeping the air cooler, more moist, etc. So the idea, yes, the drought, you know, we live in California. It's just a matter of time. All right, the last piece of the puzzle Ask your questions now because we won't have a lot of time afterwards about anything either that we've talked about or haven't talked about. Oh, there's actually the maintenance piece too. You need herbicides to remove the grass. No, you do not. Let's see. This idea that you can just spray it on and in 24 hours it will be gone. And one of the clues is if you look at a sign and it looks like that, is that really something that you want to trust, certainly around your kids or your animals? And it stays in the soil, in the plants for far longer than we are led to believe. So, in certain parts of the world where they are recognizing this, they are saying that glyphosate damages the ecosystems, including our pollinators, our soil biota, and causes direct harm. And the things that you can remove it without chemicals. In the guidebook, we talk about a process called sheet mulching, which is you remove the turf. There's different ways that you can do it. And then you're going to cover it with paper, with compost mulch, and then you are going to plant. Weed fabric prevents weeds. It does not. We actually say it grows weeds in that the weeds come from the sky. They get in there, they send down their roots, and then it is impossible to remove. So the paper helps with that and that 3 to 4 inches of mulch. Save yourself some money, some headaches. So as far as weeds, you don't have to spray them. You don't even have to pull them. You can actually cut them. That prevents the photosynthesis from happening, and so it basically stops them from coming up. And in fact, their roots break down. They are helpful in terms of breaking up the compaction. So again, you can save yourself a little bit of labor and make life easier. Maintenance. There are no gardens that are no maintenance. The types of gardens we've been talking about, these watershed-wise landscapes, are less work, more work in the beginning. Things are coming up, you're getting the irrigation just so, but it is less than being out there every couple of weeks, mowing and trimming and hedging and what have you. You do not need to prune regularly. Pruning is done very carefully, very selectively. This is a butchering job. This is not even pruning. So if you are going to prune a tree, certainly bring in a professional. Really, you only need to prune if a plant is diseased or damaged or dead. But otherwise, and certainly you're not pruning in summer, right? It's very stressful for your plants to do it then. Bugs are bad. No. In fact, only 3% of all insects and spiders and invertebrates are actually harmful. So yeah, mosquitoes, not much fun. Black widows, not much fun, but 3%, 97% are either neutral or actually beneficial to our landscapes. What we want to do is we invite the pollinators and the natural allies. And this is where that diversity and that density comes in. And this is how we do away with pesticides, herbicides, all of that. Next myth, weeds are bad. Somewhere along the line, we were led to believe that weeds are bad. And that is actually not the case. So weeds show up when the soil is disturbed, when the soil is distressed, and they are there as the great healers of the earth. So they come in to break up compaction. They come in to bring in certain kinds of nutrients. Maybe they're not exactly what you want in the landscape, but before you willy-nilly dismiss them, it's really interesting to think about why are they there. So forbs, the name we give them, sometimes known as weeds, are there, as I said, to heal the soil. So we've got some different examples. So for example, you've got chicory, helps with calcium uptake. Dandelion is wonderful when it comes to compaction. Nettle helps with nitrogen cycling and so on. And even if you have a lawn or you're going to keep your lawn, the idea that we have diversity, that maybe you are overseeding with clover or with wildflowers. More diversity, healthier soil, more resilient, less water. And unfortunately, as the human species, oftentimes we think about, some people think about the garden or the landscape as something that we need to control. And then in our controlling, we are potentially killing things. If we can remember that everything has a place, everything has a role, it fits into the web, as they say, that perhaps we can be a little bit more tolerant. There is a great website called Integrated Pest Management. We'll send you the link to that. And that lets you look up different kinds of, quote, pests or weeds and go, how do you manage them? How do you, how do you find the beneficial control or the natural control to what you may see as non-desirable? So let's change the paradigm. Let's look at how do we add to the garden? What do we bring into the garden? We bring in pests, not pests, we bring in compost, we bring in diversity, we bring in density, we bring in life. The greatest myth of all, we think we know better. When in reality, since the very, very, very beginning of time, nature has had it figured out. So the big question is, how do we work with these natural systems, these natural ecosystems, rather than fight them, rather than try to control them? She is an amazingly complex, perfect thing. Let that be our guide. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the presentation. So I think the question might be if you buy plants from certain stores. So the big box stores are known to bring in plants that have indeed, so you're absolutely right, that have been treated with neonicotinoids. Basically, it is the way that they treat them so that they are not, there's no pests on them, so that they are clean to the homeowner. But again, it is a poison. It is in the plant, gets into the soil, and has all kinds of significant consequences. So if you are going to buy plants, buy them from a local nursery. Support our local businesses. You get great customer service. They know the local area, so they can help you in selecting plants that will actually thrive in your local setting. Yeah, just a better way to go.
So a lot of people were asking questions about using, oh, how come you can't see me? Oh, that's why. A lot of people were asking questions about, could I put salt and vinegar down on my landscape? Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Like, no, no salt ever. That's why we don't use fertilizers, oh, by the way, it's a salt. So, I mean, one of the reasons. So no salt, no vinegar. You don't need to do that. You need to put weeds out of a job. And the way that you put weeds out of a job is you build the soil. So add organic matter. Add organic matter. If you have to get rid of a weed, you cut it at the base. So right where it meets the soil, cut off the top. The roots ultimately will decompose, and then you haven't disturbed the soil microbial community. So you get the benefit of decomposition, and the weed does, gives you something basically. Toss that top, if it isn't in seed, into your compost bin and let it decompose there. And the way that you keep weeds from coming is, again, by organic matter in the soil and planting densely and planting diversely. As many different kinds of plants as possible, as many plants as possible. So covering all the ground with plant material, weeds don't show up because they don't have a job anymore. All those plants are building soil. And someone asked how large mulch should be. Mulch should be no more than 1.5 inches. So you want small mulch, and you actually want it preferably to be sort of green and brown, so leaves and um, wood, or slightly decomposed, so like a slightly composted mulch. These are the very best mulches, and again, it's because you want decomposition. When you get the big mulch, or you get gorilla hair, or any of these things that don't decompose, you are not building your soil. And so it really is like the only thing it's doing maybe is holding moisture in, but I think you get more weeds from that situation because you're not building the soil. So decomposition has to happen, and you have to have plants to build soil. So let's see. There was a great question about, best way to get rid of poison oak. That's a good question.
Yeah. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, there is no good way to get rid of poison oak except for physical removal.
Very,
That
very
is the way
carefully
to get
done.
rid of poison oak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really messy job. I mean, I think there should be like a hazmat business,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, all you entrepreneurs out there, one is renting raptors. No, we're getting falcons for gophers. I think that's an idea.
Yep.
And then also goats on hillsides and
Yep.
sheep on
Shepherding.
hillsides. Like,
Yep.
come on, entrepreneurs, let's go. Let's get that going. And then hazmat, removal of poison oak.
Yeah. 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 So
Hey,
we are,
Wendy, do you have any questions or comments? Oh, here at the end?
I don't have any big questions, comments. I don't want to take up too much time. I did want to point out there's one question still there. Is there a good resource for having someone remove all the stones around my house? I take
Oh.
it those are loose stones. I wouldn't there could be any number of things. If you're going to plant there, it might be something that the landscaper can do for you. If you just want to get a handyman or something like that to remove the stones, it all depends on what you are going to do with the area. I take it you mean loose stones and not non-permeable, concrete or things like that. So, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't have any
But as
resources.
you said, is there an opportunity to actually integrate it or keep some?
Yeah.
People will pay a lot of money
Yeah.
for stones.
For
Uh,
bigger stones,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go
Yeah.
on to Facebook and say, hey, I have free stones.
yeah.
Come
Come
over and
pick them
get them.
up.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Also, don't, there's also, like TaskRabbit and things like that
Yeah.
are job based, you know, there's, you can find people who are willing to do that sort of thing. And it's reasonable for what it is. It actually takes a lot of work sometimes, if you're talking about small stones, especially
Yeah.
raking it up and stuff.
Enjoy your summer and happy gardening.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Good
Bye,
night,
Wendy.
Wendy.
Bye.